Now the second fight that's on this card, a little bit of an odd one. We have Juliana Miller, season 30 Ultimate Fighter winner at flyweight. She's going to be taking on somebody who was born in this millennium. It's Luana Santos making that UFC debut. Shiny pro record, only one loss, and it's to a BJJ ace, and a lot to touch on in this fight, because if you're looking at it for somebody like a Juliana Miller, comes in with a lot of hype. She competes in a lot of big time grappling tournaments, and if you do like look at her overall style, listen, the striking might not be the best to watch, but if you do consider, I mean, her jiu-jitsu is almost second to none at 125 pounds. So when you consider somebody like Juliana Miller, you look at her last fight, she's what, like a 3-1 favorite, taking on Veronica Hardy, who's coming off a giant layoff, and that's where things get a little bit tricky. You don't know what Hardy's going to look like. We were kind of all over that fight, and it was really a bit of a strange one for Juliana Miller. Couldn't get any of the striking going, couldn't get the submissions going, and you know, you kind of look at it, you feel like Carl Cheffers. You're just throwing every single flag up there for somebody like Miller and vice versa for Hardy. So Miller doesn't get it done in that one. People lost every single bit of stock that they had in Miller, and we've had Ultimate Fighter winners recently, like not like Forrest Griffin, Stephan Bonner, not even like Neil Magny or Chiesa. We've had fighters like Zach Paunga lose to Muhammad Usman. Usman comes into the UFC, it's kind of been so-so. Paunga's been so-so. Brogy the Bear, we're going to talk about her later on in her fight with Iasmin Lucindo up at the top of this card. But when you look at it for somebody like Miller, it just, the game hasn't necessarily progressed. She's done a great job, Excite Fight commentator. She's also commentated with XMMA. So it's good to see her kind of branching out that way, but we just haven't really seen that big progression in her game so far. So for Miller, trying to branch out and get ready for a fight like this, like you go all the way back to 2021, she had a combat jiu-jitsu win down in Mexico over Montserrat Rendon, and she's about to make her UFC debut coming up in the not so distant future, up a weight class against Tamiris Vidal. So what have we seen out of Juliana Miller in camp? We see her training with Melissa Amaya, that's an undefeated fighter over with Combate, and we've also seen the fact that she's been getting ready with some big time names. Brought in Matt's favorite fighter, Cindy Dandois, for this part of the camp. So interesting pictures out there on Instagram for sure. But when you do look at it for her, a lot of arm punches, a lot of, you know, trying to initiate the clinch, trying to get things done her own way, and it hasn't really worked out for her. Again, a minus 390 favorite against Veronica Hardy. And when you look at a fight like this against Santos undefeated as an amateur over with SFT. She was 3-0 over there. She becomes a pro. She's not really beating the greatest level of competition. So then you have to think, is she like a Tainara Lisboa, who was accomplished at Muay Thai, came in against Jessica Rose Clark as an underdog, not a good level of competition in MMA, lit the world on fire? Or is she one of those fighters like maybe an AJ Dobson that's on this card, who didn't beat a good level of competition and it hasn't really worked out for him in the UFC? We'll see that, but for Santos, you do like the fact that the striking is very good, and she does leave herself out there to get countered. That is one thing that I'll say. Throws really good kicks, has a nice Thai stance, but the hands will drop a little bit for Santos. She is a judo black belt, and it's weird because in certain fights they say she's a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, in others they say she's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So that all remains to be seen, but she trains out of Team Lucas Mineiro, and that's a big time gym. I mean, Lucas fought in the UFC, had a fight of the night, had a performance of the night bonus, but we know a fighter out of that camp that she trains with. It's Dread, it's Luana Carolina, and that's a really good fighter to train with when you're getting ready for a fight like this. Again, you're trying to replicate some of the size, and Matt and I, we've talked about it for a while. Is Juliana Miller the biggest fighter at flyweight that you're gonna find? I mean, quite possibly. So for Santos, she's got a lot to do, but the fight that she had against Jenna Bishop is a big one. Bishop is the most accomplished jiu-jitsu practitioner you're gonna find in women's flyweight. She competes now with Bellator. I know she's 36, but that's because her, I guess her grappling career really took over. So when you look at it, like in that fight, I had it all 3 rounds for Bishop. One of the judges scored a 29-28 for Santos, but you look at the rest of these performances and they really are good. LFA 154, she's on the prelims. and she had a big reach advantage, big height advantage, and she was able to get it done in that one. She really is one of those pedigree type of athletes with that judo, with that jiu-jitsu, kind of like a Tabitha Ricci down a weight class, although Ricci had the Muay Thai to help her out quite a bit in her career. So when you're looking at somebody like Santos, not a lot of head movement. She will throw the jab, double, triple up, but the biggest thing that you got to watch out for if you're Santos' opponent, it's that big overhand right. We've seen her knock down opponents in the past. Again, not the greatest level of competition. She is a very accredited player on the ground. She struggled in those positions against Jenna Bishop, and the most interesting thing I think for me, just as an aside, is the fact that you have Juliana Miller out of SoCal. Jenna Bishop's out of SoCal, but Juliana Miller didn't bring in Jenna Bishop in for this fight. Like, didn't bring her in to work some of the grappling. I mean, Cindy Dandois, I mean, bag it up, I guess. That's kind of fun, but if you do consider it, it's a little bit of an odd one. Also trained at the PI with Misha Tate, and that is a good fighter to train with, getting ready for a fight like this. I think we got the second kayak strapped on there. Listen, some big time fights on this card. For me in this one, I'm going to go with the much younger Santos, training out of Team Lucas Mineiro, as well as 011 MMA with Alain Bagoso, who was on an episode of Contender Series last summer, main evented against Farid Basharat. So some big time fights on this card, some big time grapplers in this contest. You're not going to want to miss any of that action at flyweight. And the big time main event at 170, Luque taking on RDA. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, we always say. Let's get into it.